Hi everyone, I hope you're all having a great week. Winter and the holidays are fast approaching, so I've decided that this would be a good week to start working on some seasonal greeting cards. The little greeting card front I'll be creating today will be a winter landscape, and it was sort of the jumping off point for other little projects. And I wanted to keep the project as simple as possible because I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are very busy at this time of the year, and I'm no exception. So I wanted to keep it simple and try to make it as fast and a project as possible. I have a lot of loved ones and friends that I'd like to send cards to or make cards for. And so if it takes a very long time to make the cards, well, then it'll become a lot more work than I actually have time for. So I'm trying to keep the process as simple as possible. And what I'm doing is I'm just going to be working with two main colors. And I'm also going to be working, of course, with Star Gold. No, actually, sorry. This time around, I am not using Star Gold. I'm using another gold, which I think is called Light Gold. But I'll double check that and let you know which gold it was. But I didn't go for Star Gold because the colors that I'm using in this video in particular are more neutral. So I'm going to be working with some really blue, light bluish grays as washes at the very top of my card. That's what I put down. And then on the bottom, I'm just using some neutral tint. And I'm working with these colors. I'm going to keep them very light for the most part. And then when I'm done applying the base colors, I'll come back in with my pens and markers, and I'll do a little bit more work on some details. But I really want to make the background stay light because we're talking about a winter landscape, so we're talking about snow, and I want the colors to sort of reflect a wintry day where the sun is out, but it's, like winter days, even if they're bright and sunny, sometimes appear a little bit more, they're just not as colorful and vibrant as summer days are. I guess that's just a normal thing. So I've added a little bit more of that bluish gray wash on the top part of my sky. Once I'm done applying this wash, I'm also going to add a little bit of salt just to create some texture in the sky. And this will be a little bit as if I was trying to create some clouds without actually trying to paint clouds. So the texture of the salt pulling the color away from the paper will leave some little white marks that will be sort of reminiscent of clouds without being actual clouds. So that's the abstract part of it. And again, I'm trying to keep things as simple as possible, so I don't want to make things complicated, and salt is such an easy way for me to add texture. To keep my colors very light, I'm working with lots of water, and I'm mostly creating washes. I did make the color, the neutral tint on the bottom, a little bit darker than what you see on top, and that's just to create a little bit more contrast in my painting. But I want to create something very light and airy and wintry, so the wintry whites. So a lot of what you see on the paper is actually not going to have any paint. And that's going to be the areas that are representing the snow. To create just a little bit more color contrast between the sky and the land below the sky, I am adding a little bit more neutral tint in its less diluted form, and I'm just sort of going over the paper in a sort of like dry brushing fashion, just to pick up some of the textures from the paper and create some interesting marks. I didn't show the part of the process where I added the salt to the top portion of my painting, and the reason I didn't record this or the reason I stopped the recording, I should say, is that I had a loose hair from my paintbrush come off on the paper, and I was struggling for a little bit to remove it. And you'll notice that on the top left corner of the painting, that little struggle I had taking that bristle off my paper left some marks. I am just going with it intuitively. I'm, feeling like this is an experiment, and there's no reason for me to go over it. And I actually wanted to add some texture in that portion of the painting, so why not just go with what was left and call it a little happy accident. At this point of my process, I'm still working on building a little bit of color contrast by adding some black, and I'm making the details super simple. So what I'm drawing here is just like a little layer of rock that you would find underneath the snow, if you will, and I'm trying to keep my shapes as simple as possible. And this little section is just to create a little visual interest in the painting and to differentiate the top of the painting from the bottom of the painting. It's as simple as that. And like I mentioned before, these are little card fronts. I'm creating a little painting for a card front. So I don't want to be spending, hours and hours working on this painting. If I'm working on an experiment for a card front, I'm trying to figure out a little simple design that I can make for cards that will go relatively quickly so that I can make many of them. I've changed over to my fine tip pen, and I'm going to add some vertical lines, and I'm going to add these lines to sort of replicate the silhouettes of trees in the distance. You'll notice that they're not going to be exactly like trees because I'm creating just vertical lines. I'm not creating branches or anything like that, but I want to give the illusion that there are trees on the landscape, and I want to keep my design as simple as possible so that I can make this painting happen quickly. So why not use vertical lines to create what looks like the silhouettes of some trees? Once I'm done adding these vertical lines, I'll come in again with my fountain pen and I'll add a little bit of stippling within those silhouettes, and it'll make them look even more interesting and really give the impression of that you're looking at some trees in the distance. Like I did on the bottom third of my painting, I'm going to go on the top of one of those little hills that I created, and I'm going to use the same process of creating these little vertical lines to give the impressions of trees or the silhouettes of trees. But because those trees are a little bit further away, I'm making my lines shorter. I'm also going to use my fine tip black pen by Sleechy. It's a pen that I use a lot, and I really like it because it gives like really, really fine details. I'm using it to create a little bit of stippling along the tops of my little hills, just to give them a little bit more definition, to make them more apparent, if you will. But I didn't want to use my fountain pen like I'm using it here, because when the ink comes out of the fountain pen, it's a lot darker and it leaves more distinct marks. So I wanted to use the pen like I'm using it here to do stippling that was just finer, I guess, is the finer and lighter, if you will. I usually like to create circles using a circle guide. I could freehand them, but sometimes I really want my circles to look exactly like circles, not like wonky circles. And in this case, another tool that is good to use to create like little half circles is a compass. One little tip that I'll give you, and I ignored this, I don't know why, it's just like an instinctive thing. The first circle I drew, right after I was done drawing it, I lifted the compass. So then I had to try and refine the center of the first circle I created so that it wouldn't make all the other arcs that I'm creating above the circle or the half circle or the arc that I created look wonky. So when you first lay down your compass, leave it down until you're done creating all the arcs that you want to create or all the circles that you want to create. I mentioned earlier that for this painting, I have decided to go with a different kind of gold. Usually my favorite gold, well, is star gold. By far, it's my gold of preference. It's really brilliant and it's bright and bold and I love it. But this painting is a little bit more muted. It's sort of like a gray winter day, if you will. So I thought it would be good to go with a lighter color of gold just to sort of reflect the same pale colors in the painting. The color or the gold that I'm using in this case is called Bright Gold Pearl. And it's also a really beautiful gold that comes from Kramer Pigments. And I really love it. As you can see, I've used it quite a bit as well, but I definitely don't use it nearly as much as I use Star Gold. That's my ultimate favorite. But I really like this one too. And I think it really looks beautiful in this painting in particular. I'm just going to apply a little bit around the arcs for my sun. And then I'm also, in order to create some balance, I'm going to bring some of that gold into the bottom portion of the painting. Well, it happened again. I got so involved in my painting process that I forgot to hit record on adding these little dots on the bottom. To add these little dots of gold, I simply use the stylus I'm showing you now. Not including drying time, I would say it took me about 20 minutes to create this little card front. I see a little bit of paint has seeped underneath the tape, so I'm using an old brush that I have reserved specifically for this purpose, along with some water and some paper towel to rub that off. And basically it's a process that I have to do it a number of times before it completely lifts, but usually it's just a few little times, and sometimes depending on the paint color it lifts completely off. Like in this case it did a really good job. To attach my little painting to my card, I like to use some heavy duty double-sided tape that I simply cut into the right size and attach to the back of the painting. And here we have it, my first little holiday card for the holiday season 2022. This was a jumping off point for me to create a few other little paintings similar to this one. I made them a little bit bigger than what you would actually attach to a card. So the second one I made was slightly bigger, and it's the type of painting that I easily see myself giving away as a little present. And then I made a little bigger one, and they're all very similar. As you can see, I was trying to keep things as simple as possible, but I made little variations in each painting. So on my card, you'll see that the bottom is different than on the second little painting I made, and my sun is also different. So these are ways that you can create similar paintings while at the same time not having to completely reinvent the wheel every time you make a painting. So it keeps the process simple, easy, and quick. Which one of these little paintings is your favorite? As another fun little project comes to an end, I want to say a great big thank you for joining me on this journey. I hope you have a wonderful week and happy creating!